In the news tonight, COVID patients fear being victimized. High community transmissions despite drop in COVID cases. And herd immunity, the way forward for Fiji.
From the studios of FBC Suva, Edwin Nunn.
Uluwanaka, Fiji. Stigma around COVID-19 is causing problems in treating severely ill patients because people are refusing to ask for help. Permanent Secretary for Health, Dr. James Fong, says medical teams are facing resistance from patients and their families for fear that they will be victimized. Almost 4 months into the outbreak, many Fijians are still reluctant to come forward and seek help for COVID-19.
Stigma around COVID is now becoming a big problem for us. Until I can get rid of that stigma, it's very hard to get people to engage properly so that we can save lives. But we're doing the best we can. We've got a line list of people who are positive.
Dr. Fong says this is evident in the fact that almost 50% of COVID deaths have been at home, indicating that severely ill people are not getting medical attention.
They're not dying in our facility, they're dying from home, and this is because they refuse to engage. There's an overall refusal to engage, which is causing us a lot of trouble. Okay? I've spoken to the teams that go and retrieve the bodies. They've spoken to families, or they were in a state of denial about whether the person had COVID, or many of them were just too frightened to come up.
Meanwhile, the Health Ministry is still advising people against unnecessary movement.
We have to be wary of the fact that Vitilevu really, the whole island, as you've alluded to, has COVID-19. And that's why, we've been very careful in terms of people from Vitilevu moving elsewhere.
In the latest COVID update, 7 people died en route to hospital, while 5 died at home. Despite decreasing number of COVID-19 infections over the last few days, the Health Ministry is reluctant to recognize it as an overall drop in cases. Permanent Secretary for Health, Dr. James Fong, says the decreasing number of cases is because the ministry is only testing symptomatic people or the ones who have severe symptoms. Kritika Kumar reports.
Community transmission within the Suvarnasori containment zone is at a very high level.
It means the testing number is not telling you how bad the outbreak. We don't rely on the testing number anymore.
Dr. Fong says they are keeping a close watch on the individuals in the high-risk groups, which is being used to determine the level of transmission.
We believe that we are hitting close to the peak, but none of us want to assume that we have hit the peak yet. Our attitude right now, the attitude or the posture of the Ministry of Health is not to look at the end, just to keep on looking at what we're seeing right now and respond very quickly.
He adds they are ensuring that those at high risk are being monitored. Minister for Health Dr. Efremi Wangai Nambete has reassured Fijians that vaccination is the key to decrease the overall number of cases.
Vaccinating as quickly as possible, and we get more than 50% of our target population vaccinated, reach 80%, then the rates of hospitalizations and deaths will reduce remarkably.
He has assured that the COVID-19 hospitals are equipped with oxygen and doctors to treat the positive patients. Kritika Kumar, FBC News.
Fiji may not be out of the woods yet, but we are less than 12 weeks away from achieving herd immunity. This as Fiji continues its vaccination effort to fully inoculate more than 80% of the target population by October. Christina Uluwai reports.
The Ministry of Health hypothesizes that there will be a significant drop in the infection rate once at least 50% of the population are fully vaccinated.
Of course, we're beginning to see some of the numbers drop a little bit in the Central Division. Of course, our concerns are with our families and friends in the Western Division. And again, we really just want to push out the vaccination program that we have in place and the public health safe message.
The World Health Organization acknowledged that the current vaccines does work against the current strain of the virus.
For where we have data, those products are continuing to perform well, especially for the severe end of the disease spectrum, which is, of course, what we're most concerned about.
At the current vaccination rate, Fiji is expected to reach the 80% threshold by the end of October this year. Fiji needs to achieve herd immunity to halt transmission, which will result in the easing of certain restrictions. Christiana Uluwai, FBC News.
And to our latest COVID-19 update, Fiji recorded 603 new COVID-19 infections for the period ending 8 a.m. yesterday. 380 cases are from the Central Division and 223 from the West. The Health Ministry also recorded 18 new COVID-19 deaths between the 4th and the 9th of August. 7 deaths were in the Central Division and 12 in the West. Fiji has recorded 37,512 cases since April this year. There are now 24,420 active cases in isolation, with 12,677 recoveries in total. The COVID-19 death toll stands at 317. The vaccination campaign also continues. As of last Friday, 513,535 or 87.5% of the population have received the first dose of the AstraZeneca vaccine. 180,722 people, or 30.8%, have received the second dose. The 5 most vaccinated areas include Rewa, Ba, Nanunga and Naitasiri, which have covered 100% for the first jab. Next is Nandi. Rewa also leads the list of provinces with the most first and second jabs administered. And this is James Prasad of Suva and his mother after they received their second COVID jab. Have you been fully vaccinated? Up ahead, COVID-19 becomes more strenuous for cancer patients, and youth groups take charge of protecting their environment. Welcome back. St. John's, Fiji has responded to over 2,000 emergency calls in Viti Levu over the last 2 months, the majority of which are COVID-related. Chief Executive Emma Mbovoro says they've also recorded an increase in the number of calls that are related to non-communicable diseases. Josiah Nanunga reports those living with NCDs are vulnerable to the virus.
As Fijians slowly adapt to the new normal brought about by the pandemic, so does the St. John Fiji, dealing with other health-related issues. Why?
Well, it goes back to NCDs. Yes. I mean, people need to be encouraged. We need to look after ourselves. We need to watch our weights, watch our diet. Eat right, walk right, I will always say.
Rescue those who have COVID-19 who are unwell at home, working through the processes that we have. And in the same way, the challenges that people that may have chronic diseases such as NCD may have in terms of accessing our services.
Meanwhile, the slot of first responders attended to 289 COVID retrieval cases in the last 2 months and facilitating over 2,000 emergency calls from Fijians across the country, particularly in the Central and Western Division.
You will say about 2,000 to 3,000, the number of calls we get. And they're not just from here. We even do retrievals because we don't just retrieve for the Suvarnasori corridor. When the Ministry of Health requests that we do hospital transfers from here to Lotoka, we do that.
Meanwhile, the non-government organization yesterday received 4 Land Cruiser ambulances donated by its New Zealand counterpart to ease the demand and workload. Josiah Nanunga, FBC News.
The ongoing battle with COVID-19 is becoming more strenuous and challenging for parents and their children living with cancer. The WOW's Kids Fiji, which currently supports 69 children, had to make major operational changes to ensure that financial support does not stop. The organization recorded 4 new cases of child cancer this year and also lost 6 children. Pranita Prakash reports.
The COVID-19 pandemic is not stopping WOW's Kids Fiji in its battle against childhood cancer.
With those who have to go on chemo treatment, we have to make sure that they get to the, at the moment, they don't go to the CWM, but they come into our resource center for their chemo treatment.
The organization is not only looking after the children with cancer, but parents who have lost their jobs due to the pandemic, which means more cost for them.
Now, it adds more problem And what we have done, we have done food packs for families and delivered twice a month. And also those that we can't reach, we use M-Pesa to send money over to them so they're able to buy the food.
August is normally Childhood Cancer Awareness Month, and major fundraising events are held during this time to raise funds and support the children. But this year it is being done virtually. Pranita Prakash, FBC News.
As Fiji continues to grapple with COVID-19, young people in rural and maritime areas are taking charge of their health and environment. Youth in these areas are determined to continue initiatives that will deal with unutilized land for agricultural purposes with the aim to improve livelihoods, food security and provide employment. Lina Rees has more.
Happy International Youth Day! Youth in Nambadi village, Thakonrove, are taking charge of transforming food systems as they make use of seedlings supplied to them to feed their families and earn an income.
We have planted some cabbages, tomatoes, bean, and some tumbua. We have sold them throughout Boa and the villages here to Nambawalu.
For the Nassau Level Youth Club in Savu Savu, young people are planting crops that will help them combat rising sea levels, all while providing a sustainable food source for their communities.
Conservation program. We're doing tree planting alongside our resort. As you can see, we're planting Tavola tree here, the Ivy tree, the Wood tree, and alongside with some Besi and Dilo tree that we've been planted to protect our village from big waves and also stopping the soil erosion.
Meanwhile, as many youth clubs in Fiji prepare to commemorate International Youth Day this week, young people continue to do what they can to feed their families and protect their communities. Lina Rees, FBC News.
The World Health Organization has provided emergency use authorization for a small number of antigen-based rapid diagnostic tests to be used in specific circumstances for the diagnosis of COVID-19 infections. The Ministry of Health and Medical Services recently started using WHO-approved AGRDTs in combination with the existing gold standard testing capabilities to increase testing capacity. This has also increased the test turnaround time in high prevalence areas. The antigen RDT is not recommended in areas where the prevalence of COVID-19 infection is low due to reduced accuracy compared to RT-PCR. The tests can be used in areas of Fiji where there is a high prevalence of COVID-19. And later in sports, FRU awaits green light from the Ministry of Health.
Fijians who have been affected by the COVID-19 pandemic and is eligible for the unemployment assistance have until tomorrow to apply for this initiative. The government unemployment assistance, together that of the Fiji National Provident Fund, opened yesterday. However, there are certain requirements that needs to be met. The government assistance will only be provided to eligible Fijians who have received at least the first dose of the COVID-19 vaccine by 7th August 2021 and then go on to be fully vaccinated. The government is supporting formal and informal sector employees on VT level affected by the pandemic through monthly payments of $120 for a period of 6 months. The first payment of $360 will be made on the 23rd of this month to cater for August, September and October 2021. The second payment of $360 will be paid out in November to cater for the following 3 months. The Fiji hotel and tourism industry hopes the ongoing vaccination will see the easing of restrictions that will eventually lead to the revival of the giant revenue earner. The unrelenting impact of the COVID-19 pandemic continues to affect our tourism sector, with earnings declining by 99.1% in the first quarter of this year. FHTA Chief Executive Fantasia Lockington says they are pushing their members to get their staff fully vaccinated to ensure they are all well protected and ready to welcome visitors when travel resumes. The association is also working closely with the Ministry of Tourism to explore specific recovery strategies to survive this pandemic and have a multiplier effects on the economy when things return to normal. Here are the local exchange rates as set early this morning. Once again, the Fiji dollar rose against our two major trading partners, the Aussie and Kiwi dollars, as well as the euro, but lost ground against the other international currencies we cover. Declines across the board on the commodities market. Crude oil dropped a few cents but remains at $66 a barrel. Gold dropped $1 at $1,735 per ounce, and silver closed down at $23.51 per ounce. And we now join Sharon from HFC Bank to give us the latest figures from the money markets.
Good evening. The US dollar rose up to touch the highest in more than 2 weeks against a basket of currencies. This came after the upbeat US jobs data, even as traders kept a close watch on the spread of COVID-19 cases in the United States. Data released this morning showed US jobs opening jumped to a record high of 10.1 million in June, while hiring increased. The job numbers solidified expectations that the US Federal Reserve may act more quickly to tighten their monetary policy, as Fed officials have made a jobs market recovery a condition of any tapering. Meanwhile, sharply lower oil prices weighed on the commodity-linked currencies, including the Aussie dollar, which eased 0.3% against the greenback. The Kiwi dollar also slipped back from last week's high, but expectations of a rate hike by the Reserve Bank of New Zealand next week propped up the currency against many other rivals. And that's all I have from your HFC Bank for now. Thank you.
Persons living with disabilities will now be able to upgrade their homes to accessible standards through the new Housing Assistance Program. This as the Ministry of Housing and Community Development is now accepting applications for the new program that focuses on improving the accessibility of housing needs of persons living with disability in the country. Housing Minister Pramila Kumar says that this program will assist those Fijians living with disability with a minimum grant of up to $5,000 per applicant to upgrade their homes to accessible standards. Kumar says they do not intend to build new homes under this program, but assistance will be provided for the upgrades, such as installation of ramps, handrails, accessible toilets, including the installation of grab bars to allow access to all basic amenities. The government has allocated $100,000 for this program in the 2021-2022 budget, and the ministry is hopeful that this program will continue to receive support moving forward. According to 2017 national census, about 126,000 Fijians are living with disabilities in the country. And that is the latest from my end, but coming up after the break, Sharma Brothers explores kite making during this pandemic. Stay with us.
Welcome back. The United Nations is sounding deafening warnings on climate change. The UN panel on climate change in its latest report says global warming is dangerously close to being out of control and humans are unequivocally to blame. Amid the COVID-19 crisis, supporting the health ministry is essential. This is true for the Sharma brothers and owners of On Time Engineering, who've sold over 700 kites with the embedded message "Vaccinate Fiji." Apanisa Wangarandovu reports the Sharmas have been sparing 3 hours every day to make kites.
The Sharma brothers believes every Fijians have a part to play in combating the virus. A simple message goes the extra mile.
I remember, this message was supposed to have been flown a long time back, a couple of weeks back, but I did not eventuate, so why not? It's just a matter of writing vaccination, vaccinate Fiji and give it to our children to fly this message.
I feel very proud. It's like, like each and every citizen, they should all help. It's not only the village kids' job,
Dhiren and his brother Anil have distributed several kites for free, but they have also found a new market, and the money earned goes back to struggling families.
Whatever we have raised
I intend to top that up with our personal savings to help this charitable organization distribute it to the needy in such times.
The Rand says business has been closed for months now, and they have been blessed to be back operating under COVID-19 safe measures. Their latest project are in making oxygen trolleys for the Ministry of Health. Apeniso Grandovo, FBC News.
The Ministry of Transport has received overwhelming response and support for the new budget initiatives from drivers around Fiji. Minister Fayaz Koya says drivers in the transport industry have also welcomed the initiative and they will advise the transport stakeholders when the various assistance becomes ready. Koya says the stakeholder contribution is also imperative in helping the government achieve its goal during this pandemic. The minister adds the initiatives announced in the budget are targeted to ensure service delivery and service efficiency and reliability, whilst giving operators and drivers greater opportunities. And now we join Jamie for the latest in sports.
Thank you and good evening. Ahead in sports, grandfather's advice pushes Nderanalangi. A national team races against time. This and more coming up. The intensity and physical demands of training in the National Sevens camp is enough to send some of the best players packing. However, it's also the foundation for greatness for many of Fiji's global stars. It almost got the best of Fiji Sevens gold medalist Ratumeli Nderanalangi in the lead-up to the Tokyo Olympic Games, but the lanky forward believed that perseverance would eventually pay off. Tale Materikula has more.
Getting across to make the tackle.
And advice from his grandfather was what kept Nderanalangi going through the tough 2 months of training.
There were some aspects of training that felt too much at times. Almost had me giving up, but I held. Then I can face anything on the rugby field.
Nderanalangi says adding to the pressure is the expectations of people.
We face the challenges of training head-on, but most of the time, it's the noise from social media that dampens our spirit.
Down last year, when training resumed, I couldn't handle it. At times I would swear under my breath. At one time I almost quit, but Levi Ikanikonda and the other players reminded me of the struggles and sacrifices that have been made, which kept me in the loop.
Nderanalangi and Tuivoaka says returning to their families is a priority while weighing their options on what their next step will be. Tali Materukula, FBC Sports.
Domestic rugby competitions in the country will resume a month after the green light has been given by the Ministry of Health. This means if there's going to be some relaxations next month based on vaccination figures, then we may get to witness some contact sports action in October. However, as Aquila Dama reports, at the moment, Fiji Rugby is looking at changing its competition format due to current uncertainties.
The Fiji Rugby Union will have to review its competitions as we only have 4 months left for the year, but everything depends on how soon we return to normalcy.
We have our internal plans and possible start dates, but that is continually being reviewed in line with the government restrictions and so forth. And we also continually review the competition format based on the time that we have.
FRU is also in constant contact with all unions regarding the requirements based on the health crisis.
We're also communicating with the unions to continue to update us on the status of vaccinations for their players.
While rugby's vaccination numbers are not clear at this stage, football has over 80% of its players now vaccinated. Even the Fiji Sports Commission is playing its role to help our sporting federations.
In going through our community youth groups and sports associations to get the message across and to get the people to vaccination centres.
Once competitions resume, one thing is certain, it's sure going to be a short season. Aquila Dama, FBC Sports.
The Fiji Football Association is trying to get national players into camp to prepare for the 2022 FIFA World Cup qualifiers. Due to the pandemic, the national team has not been able to gather in the past couple of months. But as Venina Rakautonga reports, Fiji FA is seeking approval from the Ministry of Health to train within their bubble.
The national team will need to wait a little longer before they can begin their preparations.
We are also ready to march into camp as soon as we get a green light from the Sports Commission. Coach Fleming had been doing his homework and preparations of the field. So we are just waiting for the Sports Commission.
Team manager Anushil Kumar says the extended squad will be trimmed in 1 month before the qualifiers.
It will be an extended squad, and most likely we will be having 1 month of camp straight before the qualifiers.
Fiji Football Chief Executive Mohammed Yusuf says they trust Coach Fleming Siritzlev and his plans.
January, the World Cup qualifiers. So we will definitely need that coach to prepare our national teams.
Due to the pandemic, the Oceania Football Confederation is still trying to confirm a venue and date for the World Cup qualifiers. Venina Rakautonga, FBC Sports.
Making his Olympic debut at the Tokyo Games has been an eye-opener for Team Fiji sprinter Mbanuve Tambakaudoro. The Mbao Bullet is gunning for the next Olympics in Paris after putting up an impressive performance in the 100-meter event, clocking a season-best 10.59 seconds. Karleni Tavi reports.
Considering the lack of international competitions in the last few months, the Pacific's fastest man remained steadfast on his goal.
My aim here was to go as far as I can. Yeah. So in preparation to that prelim round, I was going to run it like it was going to be my last. And I prepared just for that morning. And, I had to get one race done at a time. So as soon as I found out that I tied for third, I was excited.
Tambakaudoro believes he has what it takes to represent Fiji again at the next Olympics.
After seeing what the Olympic Games has to offer and just seeing being surrounded by champion athletes from not just athletics but other sports as well, it has been a real privilege and a huge honor for me as well. So planning again to shoot for the next one in 2024 in Paris.
With the 2020 Olympic Games coming to a conclusion, the focus will now shift to Paris.
And given the reactions, I think, for billions of people around the world who are taking these Olympic Games and the success of these Olympic Games as a great message of hope.
The rest of Team Fiji athletes and officials will return home tomorrow. Karleni Tavi, FBC Sports.
Australia were bowled out for 62, their lowest 2020 score, as they slipped to a 60-run and 4-1 series loss against Bangladesh. France rolled out the red carpet for the Olympic flag, which landed safely in Paris. That's it from Sports Tonight. But coming up in Weird and Wonderful, meet the microdose coach who's helping parents through psychedelic healing. This and more after the break.
Fine weather prevailed over most parts of the country. Cloudy periods with brief showers over the interior of the main islands, mainly fine elsewhere. Now to the west, a beautiful sunny day with cloudy afternoon. Eastwards from Pacific Harbour to Suva, mostly cloudy with light showers. In the north, it was another beautiful sunny day. The places we are checking out today are Nandi, Lotoka and Savu Savu. Savu Savu had the highest humidity at 71%. At sea, expect southeasterly winds 20 to 25 knots, rough seas, moderate southerly swells. Turning to the tides, the next low tide is at 2:05 tomorrow morning with high tide at 8:11 a.m. Sunrise is at 6:28. For tomorrow, partly cloudy with brief showers over Lau and Lomai Viti Group, Kandavu and southern parts of Viti Levu, elsewhere mainly fine. The outlook for Thursday, cloudy with some showers over the eastern parts of the main islands and cool at nights can be expected. Our shot of the day, this picture comes all the way from Raki Raki, sent in by Monto Mandela. And in Fijian Pulse, we ask, have you become accustomed to the COVID-safe measures as a way of life?
Yeah, I've been living it from last year, and this year too, during the lockdown until now, I'm used to it. Going home 6 o'clock, knocking off earlier around 4, so yeah, better.
Well, we all have to be accustomed to it, in order to try and rectify this problem we're facing. Yeah, if we don't, then the country becomes more worse. Yeah, and nobody wants to carry on wearing these masks.
Yeah, I'm using a face mask. I come as soon as myself come outside my house, I wear the face mask and full time on face mask. And after when I go home, then I take out the face mask.
And recapping our main stories, COVID patients fear being victimized, high community transmission despite drop in COVID numbers, and herd immunity, the way forward for Fiji. To our poll question this week, we are asking, should more be done for women's rugby in Fiji? Visit our FPC News website to take part and send us newsworthy pictures and videos. Email fpcnews@fpc.com.fj or share it with us via our social media accounts. You can also download our FPC app to keep updated with the very latest in news and sports and listen to our 6 radio stations live. That's your news this evening. I'll see you again tomorrow. Until then, stay safe. Modemanda.